listening to the Film Monsters Podcast with Nate and Ray.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Film Monsters Podcast. I'm Nate.
Cheers, everyone. I'm Ray, enjoying some damn fine tea.
And if you guys didn't realize, the title of this episode is not the episode we had originally intended.
But that is show business, damn it.
That's exactly show business. So we got to talk to Matthew John Lawrence and David Littleton, who are the director and lead star of the film Uncle Peckerhead.
Which is phenomenal, by the way.
Yeah, it was an absolutely awesome experience. I cannot believe we've done 3 of these interviews already this year, but it just continues to be awesome to see the variety of conversations we get to have here, the passion in the filmmaking for these types of films. And I'm so glad you got around to watching this one, Ray, because you know I talk about it a lot.
Oh, I guess it was worth the time. And to be fair for everyone listening, I don't just ignore Nate's recommendations. It's just when we're going to interview these people, I wait till we are a lot closer to the interview so they're fresh in my mind.
Yeah, for sure. And like I just rewatched it right before we did the interview because I wanted it all to be fresh in my mind. But they provided a lot of really great insight into the movie and also just like some fun stories. And this was a cool one too, because obviously in the last interview we had Toby, who was a director and an actress. And so this one we actually had a director and an actor, which was really cool to hear the perspective of that world from 2 different people who were involved in it.
And also from it was interesting seeing it from like the eyes of the actor who isn't at all like familiar with that world. So that was really cool to see how he translated that and kind of gave it his own spin to what we ultimately got.
It was really awesome. And yeah, so we've already experienced it, but now you're about to experience it. So enjoy our conversation with Matt and David. Bye. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to a special episode of the Film Monsters Podcast. I'm Nate.
And I am Ray.
And we're joined by 2 special guests today. You guys can introduce yourself to everybody.
Sure. My name's Matt Lawrence, and I am the writer, director, one of the producers and editor for Uncle Peckerhead.
And my name is David Littleton. I'm an actor, and I am the titular Peckerhead.
And we're so excited to have you guys on. I actually saw your movie because I don't know if you guys are familiar. Well, you probably are with the Boulet brothers. So I listened to their podcast, and one of their early episodes, they talked about your film and how much they adored it. And so I watch everything they recommend. And so I watched it and was like, this movie is incredible. And I remember I watched it like immediately the next day right after. And I do film reviews online, and it's one of like the films that I push so many people to watch, and they're always like, this is so great. And I was really excited because Ray and I are both huge music guys. So with how embedded the film is in music, we were both so excited to talk to you guys about it. So thank you so much for being on.
Oh, thank you. We really appreciate the support.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, like we both grew up in like that whole like DIY punk and hardcore scene. So, you know, we've been to those dingy bars, those, you know, being 3 out of 5 people in, you know, a VFW hall watching, you know, or having some like sketchy dude in the background trying to sell us merch. Like we've been there. So watching this, it was like, I've been there. Like, I know what that's like. And I really love that you nailed that whole, like being a first time touring band and like 3 people showed up to your show and you make $3 and hopefully you make it to your next show.
Yeah.
So I guess the first question I want to ask you guys is just how this brainchild sort of came about, because I feel like Ray and I have talked about it. We've had a couple of guests on recently that we've sort of talked about the horror genre and keeping it fresh and alive and taking this concept of like a touring band and intermingling it with like this demon type of zombie creature, whatever Peck is in the film, just how that sort of came about and if those themes of music always wanted to be present in the film.
Yeah, I mean, so during high school and college and post college, I've always played in bands, and like y'all kind of teed it up really nicely. I've experienced all of those things, both during college, being a part of a touring band, and then right after college, that was like the job. And I don't know if I can call it a job because we didn't make any money, but we toured for the better part of a year. That was like we released a record. We toured for the better part of a year. So all of the non monster stories in that film come from either my experience or Jeff who plays Max in the movie, his experience, or a bunch of our friends' experience, because really the experience is universal. The players are kind of interchangeable, but the experiences are pretty universal. It's kind of like an evergreen experience. So I wanted to make a movie that kind of talks about those experiences, because I feel that with a lot of films that talk about the touring life or a band that's starting to make it on their own, that they romanticize it quite a bit. So I wanted to kind of talk about the real experiences of what a DIY touring band goes through. And I've always been a fan of horror. I both make horror movies. Prior to this movie, I'd made a few horror shorts. I had produced a number of horror shorts. So I had wanted to kind of, instead of just kind of making it a real kind of like a straightforward maybe comedy drama about touring, I wanted to add that horror element. And I had been kind of like also toying around with this Adult Swim idea that was kind of made out like a sitcom, and it was about 3 or 4 kids living in a punk house, like, just, we never explain it, but they live with this kind of older hillbilly that acts like a Mr. Belvedere, where they get into hijinks or they get into trouble, and then they lean on this Peckerhead character to give them advice. So I had a bunch of ideas percolating, and I like just one night, you're just like, I remember I was hanging out with my wife, and we were just kind of I was kind of talking out an idea of like, man, I have all of these different ideas, none of them are really coming to fruition. What if I kind of combine them? So I just started to kind of like meditate on if I wanted to kind of like crush them all together. And I've always wanted to do kind of a monster movie, like an atypical monster movie. So just it came together, and really within 9 months from like the initial idea to the late stages of pre-production, it was a relatively short launch, because like it was, I think late in 2017 I finally like started to write the script, and then by June of 2018 we were shooting.
That's really awesome to hear that story and how it came about. And obviously, like I was talking about Peck's character, and David, I want you to talk about this too. Is like, was there a specific approach to how you wanted him to sound, or just like obviously you said like Mr. Belvedere type esque character, because he is such a likable character, and even when he gets in those violent moments, it doesn't matter, you still like love him after that's done. And I wanted to talk, David, about your approach to playing the character as well.
Sure. I mean, so much of it is just there in the script, and I just kind of have to show up and say the words. But I had been doing this play down in Florida when I heard about the audition, and I was playing this like really kind of brittle, mean Appalachian miner in this play. And when I got the script, the thing that really struck me was kind of like, even though he's a monster, he still has a lot of humanity. And working, the rhythm is dictated partly by the text. So like Matt wrote him in a certain way, and so I just tried to follow that. And then the voice came from my uncle. I have an Uncle John who literally sounds exactly like that. Like everything, there's no such thing as a 1-syllable word. Like everything is like drawn out. And every time he sees me, he's like, "Well, hey, David, how you doing? How you been?" And so that's kind of where I got his kind of like drawl and all of that.
No, it works perfectly too. And I one of the things I wanted to talk about, Ray and I were discussing this after he watched it, is the chemistry between your whole cast feels so natural. And I just wonder, how long was that process? Did it take a long time to find all of these pieces that fit together so perfectly? Because for a while when you're watching it, you sort of forget that you're watching a movie as far as the dynamics between these people, because they do feel like bandmates. And it's such a naturalistic connection. So I just wanted to hear about that casting process a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, like just kind of jumping off of David's, David's story is, I know David's heard it a couple times, but casting was really tough because for the Peckerhead role, we had done like an open casting in person because this was pre-pandemic, and we went through like 2 full days for like a micro budget indie feature that's, an eternity, because you're paying for like the space, you're paying for, lunches, you're paying not for the people that are auditioning, but, the people that are there.
Yeah.
I didn't get
that,
lunch.
that would. But I mean, and this is no knock. The auditioning process is really hard, but nobody came close those first couple days. Like people were doing like really bad Joe Dirt impressions and stuff like that.
Oh,
yeah,
no.
it was really sad. And we got to this point where, we're shooting, like we had set our principal dates. We're shooting in like a few weeks. And we don't have, the titular character, which is kind of like it all comes down to that. And luckily David sent his tape in. And I mean, like David did not need direction. David had that character down pat. So as soon as he sent in that audition, we were like, we gotta get this guy up here. And then when it came to the rest of the cast, I'm telling you, like it was a miracle because, Chet, I mean, the only person that was on since, the very early start was Jeff, because he was a friend of mine that plays Max, and he was writing the music, and he's such like a born performer and is just like has this charisma that I knew I wanted him. But for the rest of the cast, I mean, we had nobody in mind. And luckily Chet and Ruby came in and were like just light years, just kind of like locked into the character. So it wasn't like you had to give them like a lot of direction and a lot of like, a lot to chew on. It seemed like they really kind of understood the characters from the bat. And I mean, just when we got them together, it was, again, it's all miracles, like making movies at this level, at any level, but especially when you have no money, it's a miracle. Because I mean, I'm telling you, the first day, it felt like the 4 of them locked in, and I mean, David, I'm sure I'd love to hear like his perspective, but it was so heartwarming as a director when, you're wearing so many different hats, because I was also producing it. And I mean, they were traveling together, they were eating their meals together. I mean, they were really like, they were living the art. And yeah, David, I mean, I'm sure you can speak more eloquently.
Yeah, and it's funny because they started. I think I got there the first day of shooting, didn't I? So, but I got there late. They were already there, and so it kind of mirrored the timeline of the film that they had all met each other. But just like hanging out on set that first day, and then I stayed with Jeff through the whole production. We were like roommates, and then that was Jeff's van in the movie, and Jeff would drive us all to set, at like 8 o'clock in the morning, whatever. We'd stop, we'd get coffee. People would say, "Oh, you should hear this song," or "You should hear this song." Jeff turned me on to Idols. I'd never heard Idols before.
Idols is great.
Oh yeah. And so we would all share like music tastes and everything, and we really bonded. I mean, I'm so fond of really everybody involved with the movie, but I have a special place in my heart for Chet and Ruby, and especially Jeff, because Jeff is like a miracle of a person. He's just the best dude ever.
That's so interesting to me that that you mentioned that's Jeff's van, because one of the first things I remember thinking when I saw the van, I'm like, that is like the perfect van for touring musicians. It's like,
right,
because
it's a real thing.
And it's actually his van, and he's the actual musician. And so that was because one of the things that I was talking to Nate about is how especially if you've grown up in that like DIY punk scene, how realistic that feels. Like, I've seen that van You know, that van is so like, if you are musicians, you have that van. You have that
Mhm.
16-seater van. So yeah, that was one of the first things I'm like, oh, that is like the perfect vehicle to go on tour. And that's amazing.
So one night, about halfway through, I don't know why, maybe I got released early or something, but I had to drive the van back from set to housing. And it was like maybe a 30-minute drive. And it's like, it literally, I'm on a kind of a freeway, a very busy street, and the engine just died. And it did that like, 4 times. And I'm just like, what the fuck do I do? So I think Jeff actually, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, Jeff has a new van that looks exactly like the old van, but just like a little nicer.
Yeah, a little nicer. Like I think it's an Econoline.
Right.
And also like the house is Jeff's house. I mean,
Wow.
it is like a, you know, a row house in Philly. That was like, I mean, they've since done such a nice job, but it was like, it looked like a derelict, like squatter's house.
It's fancy now.
Yeah, it's really fancy now, but I mean, and that's what was kind of the miracle of it is we had, you know, it was such a small crew, such a small cast, relatively speaking, and it was everybody like had to, you know, do like 17 different things, especially somebody like Jeff, who he's acting in the film, he wrote all the music, he's driving, you know, the cast for the majority of the shoot. We're using his vehicle to transport many people. We're using his house to shoot in. And he's just one of the many players that kind of gave, became bankrupt both emotionally, financially, in so many ways, just to make sure this film got it to the finish line.
That is so awesome to hear that story. And I think that's the type of movies we love to talk about, are the ones that feel like such like a community effort. And I wanted to talk about too, the relationships between those characters. There's so many moments in the movie that feel like things that friends would do, like maybe some like inside jokes, like just the way they interact. And I wanted to know, when it came to you writing the screenplay, are a lot of those things scripted, or were there some things that they just kind of did after being together for a while that you left in the film? Because there's just so many moments, even when they're just like goofing around outside, like that just feel like friends hanging out.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are some things that kind of were in the moment, but a lot of I think a lot of those moments, like, you know, came from the script, and it's just, I mean, that means a lot to hear, because one of the things that we really wanted to do with this film, and I want to do with all my movies, is even if it's a, you know, defined as a horror movie or kind of like a B movie or whatever you want to call it, is you want kind of I want there to be heart in it, you know. And one of the things that I really wanted to come out, and that's why like the casting was so integral to the success of the movie, and the fact that they all genuinely, outside of their characters and those dynamics, like really cared for and loved each other as people, you know, behind the scenes, is I wanted it to feel like, you know, a group of friends that have, you know, known each other for, you know, over a decade, that are kind of have their backs against the wall, that are kind of these shaggy dog characters, that, you know, have to depend on each other and have to, you know, their love has to carry them through these, you know, trials and tribulations, whether it's dealing with a monster or just dealing with how absolutely awful, you know, touring can largely be, because you're meeting ne'er-do-well character after ne'er-do-well character, and you're just dealing with, you know, just eating a shit sandwich, like, I mean, hour after hour. So you really kind of you need those moments of hope and those moments of like deep affection where they're encouraging each other. And, you know, it's kind of like, you know, I always think about it, you know, like a sibling, where I can make fun of this person because I love them, but you don't fucking step to them, you know,
Yeah.
like that type of relationship. And I mean, we just got so lucky that, you know, the way in which they were off screen, you know, happened on screen too.
And just to piggyback on the back of that is 90, I would say 99.9% of every word that's spoken in the movie is in the script.
Wow.
I mean,
Wow.
Matt just wrote a clean, tight script that worked in that way. I think the one time where Matt was like improvise was when we were sitting at the table talking about the scones with and every time I watch that, I cringe because none of us know what to say. Like, I think Jeff is like, "What's your favorite kind of potato chip?" or something like that. So none of us can really take credit for any of the dialogue or the relationships or anything just because they were all already written, you know.
That's so awesome to hear. And I do want to talk about, because Matt, you were speaking on like the wholesome content of the film. And I feel like horror comedy, I guess, if you even want to call it that, is a hard type of genre to approach, because if you can't mesh the tone together well, that's when movies don't work. But what I really like about your film is that you always take the horror seriously. And I think that's the most important part. So I guess I just wanted to ask, as far as your approach, or even David, your approach to acting in those scenes, like, how did you manage to mesh those two things together so well without sacrificing one or the other of them?
I mean, I think it's really like having really good actors, like having actors that really like know what the hell they're doing, that like, and are also like serious dramatic actors, like especially with David and Chet. I mean, but Ruby and Jeff are also great, but I mean, David and Chet really have like some of the more dramatic moments, both in terms of the horror, the heartfeltness, the comedy, stuff like that. So it's one, just having actors that, you know, can act the hell out of a scene. And two, like, just, I mean, like the one thing is, even as ridiculous of a premise, or ridiculous, how ridiculous the situation, or how, you know, however you want to define each and every scene, you know, what the point is taking it seriously. So, I mean, like in comedy or horror, it's like really believing it, even if it's such an absolutely especially for comedy, an asinine premise that the characters find themselves in, or a situation, is that they're, you know, deathly serious about it. Same thing with horror, is just like really believing it. And if, you know, if they can sell that, I mean, to me, that's all you need. So it's just, I mean, I really like, the film really benefited from having like insanely good actors, like really understanding the film, and also not kind of doing the winky, like, or I'm too good for this, because I see that a lot in horror comedies, and I mean, just in a lot of films that are micro budget, is if you get an actor that just thinks they're above it, that can totally tank it. Or just, you know, actors that don't understand what comedy, you know, how comedic acting goes. Comedic acting isn't that you're in on the joke. You're not in on the joke. The audience is, but you are just so locked in to the actual dramatic stakes of it, that's how it works. But David, I'd be curious, just hearing it from your perspective, what you think kind of helped to.
Again, the script, and you know, there were a couple times when there were a couple things I was nervous about going into it. When they made the offer to take the role, like, I read the script, and then I'm like on the phone with Matt going, I don't know about this whole shitting on everyone scene, you know. I just don't, I'm not 100% sure how I feel about that. And I joked with him, like, if I ever got any traction as an actor and then died, like on CNN on a loop, they'd be like showing me shitting all over Chet and Jeff and Ruby. But no, very much what Matt was saying. Like, even though it seems absurd, like, that is there, you have to put yourself in that position, and that those are their circumstances. So like, when he's at the diner, he is about to lose, you know, something super important to him. So there's an urgency there, you know, that and you can't play it goofy. Like, he's got to win them over, or he's fucked, you know. So there's that. In terms of the monster part, you know, I'm a huge, as you saw from behind me, I'm a huge horror fan. So I had decades of like great examples to draw from, you know. And there's a little bit of Freddy Krueger in there with the gleefulness. There, you know, it's just that it kind of exactly like Matt said, like, what they want, they really want. And whether it seems it's part of the comedy part of it or part of the horror part of it, like Peck needs to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's gonna make shit happen. And when it comes down to the wire, like at the end, when he kind of changes tone, it's because he's just so back against the wall, and it's about survival for him at that point, you know. it's not about friendship anymore. It's about like, I gotta live. So
I really like that the film ends as bleakly as it does. And I wanted to talk about that with you guys because it has this wholesome buildup the entire film where you're just like, I really love these characters. But I also, in rewatching it this time, I noticed this. I feel like for me personally, what the film hits on, and Matt, I'm sure it hits you this way too, making it this way, is it feels like the experience of a band. Because you get the peaks and valleys, right? And it's like, especially a DIY indie band, you're like, oh, this is my chance, I'm gonna make it, and then the shit hits the fan again, and you're always kind of trying to do that. So I was wondering if that was part of ending it on such a bleak note, because it does end very dark. And it's like, for DIY indie musicians, that's kind of the cyclical nature of it all.
I mean, that's a great take. Probably an unconscious one, because that's happened with every single band I've been in, is being on the precipice of something's gonna happen right now, and then it just, the rug gets, pulled from you, or the whatever. I mean, yeah, I mean, there were a bunch of different things that, because it's really nice to hear that somebody liked the ending, because that's the one thing we get hammered on, is that they don't like it. And I actually take that as a compliment when people don't like it, because I think Pex won them over as he did the band. And then when they find out that he's not the person that they presume him to be, it's really upsetting. And there was like, it was definitely like a meditation on a few things, like some people have seen it as, on substance abuse, where, it's really fun to be around somebody who's kind of a wild man or wild person, right? Until it's not, right? It's like, it's really fun. And then there's that turnkey moment where it's just like, oh, this is actually very dangerous, and both to themselves as well as the people around them. And I felt that, like, as I was writing it, it's this idea of like this theme of, selling your soul to achieve your dream, and the chicken's got to come home to roost. I mean, they've accepted that. And, in every fable and every story that kind of has that theme, there has to be the moment when, you get punished for making that decision. So I felt that, like, it needed to be bleak. And it was also like, there's a little bit of like a meditation on kind of your conservative uncle, that, is really sweet and charming. And you do like it. Like, Peck is like he's not fake charming. He's not posing as a nice guy. He's a nice guy that's also, doing these things that are incredibly, damaging and life altering for, and life threatening for the people around him, and just kind of reconciling that there's like, it's all gray area. It's not just like black and white. Is like, Peck is both, this really, lovely, charming, affable, person that really does protect the band. I mean, he does act as this barrier between these scumbag, promoters, and, these homophobic, metalheads and stuff like that. At the same time, he's this homicidal monster that is actually murdering innocent people too, when they put their head on the pillow. And I thought that was interesting, that it's not just like, this like kind of cartoony adventure story with Peck where, there's no stakes, or just a movie that's just like, and I love these movies, but just a bleak ass horror movie from start to finish. I thought it could be interesting to like, actually, like, that's not how I kind of like see like storytelling that I find interesting. Is it's not just one thing. It's not a binary thing where it's just like a 0 or a 1, is that it can be both. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I was coming from with it, with that. And I thought David like totally understood that, can make the character so absolutely like, this lovely person, this lovely human that David is, but then also giving this, like, as it's going on, starting to realize like, oh shit, like, it's, I know I'm going off on the brain out here, but I was just thinking about it because, Wiki and I, my wife and I, have this friend that's like, a born kind of performer, always the happy-go-lucky, like, just kind of like this, like, life of the party, like holds court at social gatherings. And when you see this person angry. It's like so scary, but I kind of like love it because it shows me that they're a three-dimensional human being. They're not just the clown or the gesture. They're like actually like a fucking human. They're like, oh, good. It's good. It's great. This isn't his name, but it's great to see Joel actually show more than one personality trait. Yeah, and that's kind of that's what I thought would be hopefully the most interesting part of that character and that story.
Something that I've noticed about the horror genre is that the best villains have layers to them. You know, I think of like The Shining. Jack Torrance wasn't an inherently terrible person. He gave in to a demon, and then you see his downward spiral. And again, with like a bunch of monsters or villains in all of these movies, they're never just like twirling their mustache and being bad for the sake of being bad, but there are layers, and they were a human being, and they did have an actual like personality to them. And I keep thinking of Jack Torrance because of the poster back there, but like you look at Jack, and he's like, he was a nice guy that just wanted to try his best, but eventually he caves into his vice with alcoholism. So like, I feel like that's something that you guys nailed really well, that Peck is not just, oh, he's a monster. He's this one-dimensional monster. He's someone you would like. He could even represent, like, we live in an era where there's so many bands and musicians that are doing a bunch of scummy things. And thankfully they're being exposed to it. But it's almost like that charismatic lead singer that like slept with an underage teenager, and you know, they need to be held accountable for it. So it almost kind of reminded me of that too, of like, we live in this society where we are seeing so many people in positions of fame doing these scummy things, but they, for all intents and purposes, look like the nicest people as well.
Yeah,
Interesting. I have that's nobody's brought that up before. That's very interesting.
yeah, that's a great.
That's
great
very
thing.
astute.
Yeah.
Going back to the end, I have a question for Matt. In that, and I hope I'm not like lifting the curtain too much. When I got the script and I read the script, the end was like Judy checks the time, and it was smash cut to black. So there was not like any indicator about screams, or you didn't know. I think when reading the script, you didn't know how it went down. It was left to your imagination. And was that something that you hadn't landed on yet, or like in editing, you made that decision? Or
Yeah, it was definitely in post. Like the decision was made to. I mean, and I still think that it's not clear. I mean, we definitely infused a little bit more of like it's actually happening. But I still think like, you know, those sounds could be in her head of her kind of imagining what it would be like. I just felt I wanted it the way, because I'm pretty sure one of the cuts had kind of just that. She looks at the watch and then it cuts to black, and it felt like such kind of a fizzle, like just kind of like a, you know, just a like a wet fart ending. Like it just like felt like, man, it feels like we should like end on kind of like building up on this crescendo. And I just think like I think I was just like messing around. Like we got really lucky that, you know, the guys that did the sound design, Silver Sound, like, you know, were really willing to kind of work through about, because we tried you know, at least like 24 iterations on how just sonically to end it. And that one just felt right. It just felt like a little bit more unnerving and like really sad that like, even if Peck isn't murdering people before her eyes, as probably many people think, I mean, she is just now haunted with visions and the sounds of, even if he's not there, what she's kind of, what she sold her soul for.
Which,
yeah,
it's really interesting you mentioned that, because the very last dialogue that they have with Peck is Peck reminds him midnight is coming soon. And then you have the whole situation in the jail. And then I remember thinking to myself, when they get freed, the first thought I had is like, wait, so are these kids going to have to watch their backs at midnight for the rest of their lives? Yeah. That was the first thought I had.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like, you know, I always think that's like a more just like a grueling punishment. Instead of being killed, you just have to spend your remaining years, which especially for a bunch of young 20 somethings, it's going to be decades of just, always having to look over your shoulder. And especially, it's kind of like the monkey's paw thing that they got what they wanted, quote unquote. They're like mildly successful, but they're also, in the script, the original script too, we just didn't have the money. Is that, they're getting hit with red buckets of paint being called murderers and stuff like that. Like there's like this ongoing kind of punishment by the public too, is maybe they're being celebrated because of their notorious backstory, and maybe they can sell out basement shows, or they can go on tour and sell out these VFWs, which is definitely a step up, but they're still known as either murderers, or they have to look over their shoulder. So there was more baked into that we just didn't have the money or the time or the days to shoot that out.
But it's all there implied,
Yeah.
It is. It works really well. And I do want to ask, because you talk about the limited budget, and one of the things I'm really impressed with, and Ray and I both love talking about this, is the practical effects in the film. And I wanted to know kind of what the approach was like for you, Matt, to was this your first exposure doing this level? And then David, what was it like being in that makeup and especially that scene in the bathroom where the band is getting ripped to shreds, what shooting that was like? Because it all feels very real, which is what I love about it.
Yeah, I had done on one short film, I had worked with practical before, and a lot of my favorite horror movies that have gore definitely lean more heavily on the practical end of things. So we knew we wanted to do it, and this is again just like another miracle that I had sent the script to a bunch of practical effects houses, and I'm telling you that what they quoted us at was over the budget that we had for the entire movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
So finally, I think with the fifth or sixth house that had, just quoted us beyond, I talked to the guy and I was just I don't know what to do. You're the fifth or the sixth place that's given us this quote. I know you're worth this, but we can't afford it. Even if I cut out 50% of the stuff I wanted to do, we were not even close to being able to afford it. And he was like, hey, I have this guy who works for us, works out of our house, and he's trying to, start out on his own. You should reach out to him. And that's who we use, Jared Baylog. And Jared was, a miracle person, worked with our budget, and oftentimes, when you're starting to really do budget stuff, you meet with these craftsmen, craftswomen, artisans. And, even if they're really rooting for you and want to bring your vision to life, they're just listen, I can't do this. I need, I need another 20 grand. I need another 3 people. And there were so few moments where Jared would be you really want it to look like that? And I'd be like, dude, that's what I see in my head. He's like, okay, we'll make it work. And he was just, he is an absolute, we got to work with him again. We did a music video for Jeff's band, and he created an alien. And Jared is just, he's working on the Walking Dead spinoff. He's done a bunch of higher level stuff, and he still finds the time to work on, these micro budget things. Cause he's the real deal. He's just a uber mensch, and just a really beautiful, insanely talented person. Him and his assistant Sean worked on set for a week with us, and they just brought everything to life. And David, what was it like? What was it like working with practical? What was it like working with those insane the insane days where we had so much gore and we were shooting in a 1-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn?
Yeah. So we went in way before production, a couple of months before production, to get fitted for prosthetics and stuff. And at the time I was clean shaven, and we decided at the last minute to that I would have a little bit of scruff. And so the first day that we did the prosthetic face and everything, Jared was like, what the fuck? You have a beard now. And so he was able to improvise it and make it look great. But it was a blast. So many other actors I've talked to have been like, oh my God, that's my dream, is to be a fucking monster and look like that. Yeah, it was fun. It took about 2 hours in the chair the first time with Jared and Sean. And then as we went through that last week, they got faster and faster at it. The worst part were these nails. Like he wanted to take care of my nail beds, and so he wouldn't use like super glue or something like that. And there was just so much blood, as you saw. And so that, as soon as I would like touch anything, the nails would pop off, and we'd have to like look for them. I think we had one extra set. So like anytime a nail was lost, like 4 people are on the ground, like, we cannot lose that nail. We have to find the nail. So, that was a little bit of a challenge, but Jared and Sean were so great and rolled with the punches, I think, so incredibly well, as did everybody on set. When you're working with a budget like this, or even a higher budget, things come up, and everybody was just able to just kind of, okay, well, that's what this situation is now. Let's, like we had and Matt's told this story. We shot at the diner scene, and we were there, I think a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours, and we started to run out of time. And then we realized we didn't have like an establishing shot of the outside of the diner. I think maybe it was even like starting to rain a little bit. And so every single person on set was like moving gear out of the way to make that shot happen. And that's a testament both to Matt, because all that stuff trickles down when you have somebody in charge you want to succeed. That's helpful. And also the people he hired, like, nobody was afraid to get their hands dirty or lend an extra hand.
Yeah,
That's
David.
really awesome.
David's burying the lead on that, because the diner scene, actually what had happened was we were shooting, and basically, like, when you're shooting, you shoot one side and then you wrap that side, then you shoot the other side. So we were saving David's side for last. So we shot, Chet, Ruby, and Jeff, who were all on one side, and it took a little. It was like a slower go than we were working at a really nice clip. For some reason, we were going a little slower. And then the owner of the diner, who was really super nice and let us shoot there, was just like, listen, y'all, I mean, I think he told us we could go till 10, and like at, he's like, actually like 9:30, right? Which fucking is like, when you hear that, your heart just like drops to your butt. So we like switch sides, and it was basically like, we have maybe 2 takes max for David. And David, like, what you see in the movie is his first take. I mean,
Wow.
he just like, and that's like a 5-6 minute scene, or probably like closer to a 7-minute scene. Just did it straight twice, no stops, didn't have to redo any lines, did that. And yeah, then we realized we forgot to do this exterior kind of, establishing shot, and all of our equipment was out in front. And the guy's like, I'm turning off the lights in like 2 minutes. And it was wild. I mean, like David said, it's something that like definitely is one of the more memorable things. And it sounds like such a small moment. But seeing like the entire crew, actors included, racing to move equipment so the cameras could quickly set up the shot before. I mean, I'm telling you, like, the guy, we got like 3 seconds of that exterior, and the guy fucking shut the light. like he was not playing around. It was not like, dad's kind of warning us. He was just like,
no, he was done.
Get out. But yeah, it was great.
I love hearing stories like that. That's like in all production. I just finished film school last year, and just
congrats.
Thank you. I love working on film sets, but it feels like all the best moments that I've experienced are similar to that, where it's people coming together and doing that thing. And I did want to talk about, because how big music is in this, and you talk about Jeff's role in creating the music. I love the original dub music for the movie, but there's so many incredible cut-ins of just like musical cues throughout that I think accompany the tone really well. Did Jeff work on all those as well? And like, did you guys work together on it so that you could kind of say, okay, sonically, this is how I want the film to sound?
No, that's actually like another collaborator of mine that I've worked with for like kind of the better part of probably, over a decade now, Christopher Marty. Who like his music moniker is called Cosmic Monster. But he's a kid that like came from like punk rock and metal. I mean, like, is like one of the real ones, like that type of dude. I mean, we definitely talked about, because Jeff wrote the dub music, he wrote the Dominion Rising music. So basically, like, Chris got to hear all the dub music, got to see kind of those early cuts. And just, I mean, I think he just understood what we were going for. I mean, like, he's lived that life too. He listens, well, like, you know, I mean, I think he listens to, like, definitely like more of the metal and kind of atonal type of music that I don't listen to. I mean, but he is an incredibly talented musician that is just tuned in. So I'm sure, like, I might have given him like a handful of like samples or example needle drops and stuff like that. I mean, but really that's all just Chris giving me like dozens of options, and being like, well, what do you is this more kind of like, are we getting close? You know, it's kind of like the porridge thing. Are we warmer? Is this the right temp? Yeah, and that's just Chris is like, just, I mean, and that dude works at a crazy clip. And I mean, he's like one of those people that like can release music every week, you know,
That's
like, just
insane.
like, it's just like a prodigious musician. And I just lucked out that I think it was one, like, just a short film I had been using a buddy of mine, and he couldn't do it anymore. Like, he had gotten like a big boy job, and he was like, hey, like, I know this kid, because Chris is a little younger than me, and he's just like, he's crazy talented, loves horror movies, loves monster movies. Chris is like a huge like kaiju Godzilla like fan. And just like, I mean, the dude just can crank it. So when, you know, you only have like, you know, a couple of months to get this shit together, I mean, he's somebody that's good, that like he'll just work like a dog. Yeah, Chris is great. I mean, I would check out Cosmic Monster. And obviously, like, Jeff is just, I mean, both of them, even though they didn't collaborate together, they bounced off of each other so well, that it was like, it's a dream. It's one of those things where you're just like, man, I'm so blessed to be around so many talented people. I feel like, just like I'm holding my breath, that like, you know, that you know, that they all like don't realize that, you know, I'm a whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's just, it's amazing, just kind of like seeing how it's not so much like what you tell them, it's just people really understanding the project.
That's really awesome when you have that too, and those resources that you can use. And Ray and I both talked about this beforehand. Was there a specific band that inspired the other band? Because we were trying to wrap our brain, because we're very embedded in that scene. And I'm like, I guarantee you that Matt had to have come into contact with some band that was just the douchiest people
Yeah.
imaginable.
Yeah,
It
so
was hilarious.
thank you. So yeah, I mean, so it's like a few different things that came into mind. Yes, being in a band, and especially being in a band that my one band that, like, I would say, I wouldn't even say successful, but we did a lot of touring, right? And we played with like bigger level bands and stuff. And that was during kind of the emo boom. So that's like, you know, basically I was in this band from 2003 to 2006. So like, you know, just running through, like, you know, touring during that time, you got to see a lot of those types. So there's kind of like, it's a mix of those people, like, just from my interpersonal interaction with them. But when Ryan, who plays Shiloh, the two things I sent him, I sent him one thing, but that character is based on, Ryan and I we met when we were going to film school in Boston, and we would do like skits together, and he had this really great character that was kind of like a pretentious academic. So he just kind of took some of that pretentious academic type and infused it into the character. And it was also, I just sent him, no joke, this was the only thing I sent him, is I sent him interviews with Jared Leto from 30 Seconds to Mars. And I was like, because that dude says some of the like this shit that, like, I can't believe even if the interviewer is a professional, like, didn't laugh in that dude's face. Like, he said some shit that just like, you know, would turn my hair white. It's crazy. So yeah, I mean, it's like very much, I don't, because I'd be happy to work with Jared at some point. But
I think that ship has sailed.
Yeah, no, I know.
But
yeah, I mean, it was just that dude's so insufferable in interviews that I couldn't do it. Yeah,
Probably a lovely man.
Yeah.
But
Did you want to plug in that band you were in?
Oh no, I don't. No. We also had we were definitely like the band I was in. It was kind of, I'm still proud of musically what we were doing, because it was kind of like cursive during the ugly organ era,
Okay,
like that type stuff. But we have some cringe lyrics, because we definitely were influenced from the emo days of the first aughts. So it's very embarrassing.
Nah, that's the best. That's the nostalgia stuff. So speaking of music and just in general, just to ask both of you guys, we always love asking people what your influences are, because like obviously we can watch something and say, oh, it feels like it's from this and this, but hearing like David, some of your either acting or just like film influences, and Matt, like some maybe directors or people that you really look up to that kind of bleed through in your work.
I mean, for me, it's just all these great character actors, from where it's like you've seen the guy before, but I don't know his name. But I know I've seen that guy before, like Ian Holm, I think is fucking amazing. And people don't always know who he is, or Denham Elliott, or Harry Dean Stanton,
one of my favorites.
Dean Stockwell, these kind of grizzled, because I didn't start until I was 51, 52 doing this. I was a graphic designer for most of my life. Yeah, I'm a huge, I think everything Tilda Swinton does is super interesting. And in terms of my personal taste in films, like I was talking to Matt the other day, I rarely watch a movie more than once.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not, like, I don't have a lot of physical media, but I was watching Ben Whitley's Kill List the other day. And that is near and dear to my heart, because it's just so fucking black, It's so dark, and it's not afraid to just be that. Like, it doesn't need to curtail its ambitions to how it's going to be received. I feel it's just really good, solid, great performances in that film. Other horror stuff I love, I loved It Follows. I did see that more than once. I actually got to see the director do a Q&A, and he's so fucking smart. So I love that film. I hate this term, but like a lot of that kind of elevated horror stuff is right up my alley. But at the same time, like, if I'm flipping channels and Return of the Living Dead is on, I'm gonna watch the whole thing. I'm gonna watch the whole thing, because every moment of that is like fucking gold. I just watched Tucker and Dale.
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah, for the first time, like in October, and that's a tremendous film. Evil Dead, and because I'm so much older, there's old stuff like Hitchcock, and when I was a kid, at the first multiplex close to our neighborhood, my brother and my dad and I went, and they went to see The Marathon Man.
Yeah.
And they decided that was going to be too much for me. I was like maybe 10 years old or something. And so they just dropped me at this other theater where Burnt Offerings was playing. And Burnt Offerings fucked me up for like a good decade. Like, I don't know if you know this movie, but there's this character who kind of represents death, who's this like skeletal chauffeur. And I had nightmares about that fucking chauffeur, like, until I was in high school. Man, it was crazy. So yeah, I'm a huge film buff, and my favorite genre by far is horror. I love that stuff. So, I think you take a little from all of that. I've just tried to absorb all the best of that stuff.
Yeah, I'm with David. Like, there are definitely directors I love. Like, I love Sam Raimi. I love Richard Linklater. People of the, I feel that, I love horror. It's probably like the genre that I'll watch the most, kind of the biggest cross section of stuff. But I like my tastes are kind of varied, but I mean, definitely like Raimi, Linklater. I don't know if this is really reflects anywhere in my work, but like I'll like obsess about a director. Like right now, I'm like just devouring like all of De Palma's stuff.
Yeah.
Some of I've seen it again, but I've watched like stuff that I've never seen, like Carlito's Way,
Mhm.
and stuff like that. So that's kind of that's been fun. I really love kind of like I'm a huge fan of like lowbrow comedies. So like Billy Madison is
Yeah.
like one of my favorites. Wayne's World is probably one of my favorite movies of all time. Yeah, and it's like I also love like huge big blockbuster stuff. I mean, I just love movies. I love going to movies. And I even like I've been rewatching because I used to really like when I was in school, like New American Cinema stuff. So I rewatched like Five Easy Pieces, which I think is one of my favorite movies from that era. But yeah, I mean, it's just it's all over the place. Like I feel like I'll just kind of get into like a rabbit hole and just kind of devour all of that stuff. Like to David's point, I'm hoping to make another movie. So I've just been watching like a lot of like more recent horror just to kind of see like trends and how things are being shot, or how things are being lit. Not even so much to copy it, but maybe to not fall into these trends. But yeah, I mean, it's like I mean, I also love like Return of the Living Dead. Growing up as a kid in the 80s and 90s, like all of those kind of video nasties were kind of like, Sleepaway Camp was such like a huge kind of pivotal movie.
Love it.
Yeah. So I mean, it's everything. I mean, I really love movies, even bad movies, as long as it's like, as long as they're not punching down, and as long as they're not like lazy, as long as they're not like lazy and just cashing a check. If a bad movie is made passionately, like I can get down with it. So yeah, just all over the place.
And so you think if whatever you're working on next, do you think it'll probably be in the horror genre again?
Yeah, it's going to be, I mean, I hope pray for me, light candles. It's like hopefully it'll be a high school slasher meta horror comedy.
I love that idea. And do you find when you're approaching stuff like that, even your current film, you were talking about horror, and I feel like post-pandemic, we've actually been really like blessed with a lot of amazing horror movies. I feel like there's just this creative renaissance around horror. And so you guys' film is obviously really fresh and like unique and individual. And do you find like, especially tackling something like a slasher genre, do you want to still try to bring in some of that like wholesome element from this film, or things that kind of set it apart?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, like the one thing though, in kind of developing this new project and stuff, like one of the things that I've kind of held on to is the like this term of heartfelt horror, which is really important to me. It's like I always find whether it's horror, it doesn't matter what genre it is. Just like when you can tell that the writer or the people making the film have like a deep affection for the characters, even if the characters can sometimes or all the time be unlikable. But like there's like a deep love, and the characters in the story have love for each other in some way, shape. Obviously, not every character, but yeah, that's like a huge thing. And also, just like I feel that I think the prestige horror, there's people now, or not now, but like have always realized that you can couch these really kind of interesting conversations, because especially with I even would argue with comedy too, even though comedy doesn't do it as much, is with horror and like comedy and kind of more heavy genre stuff. It's easier to kind of like couch, commentaries or just dialogues about stuff that's going on in the world, and people don't feel like they're being kind of lectured, or that, it's some didactic approach. So like, with this in every film like I want to make, I want to say something without having it be the thing that's at the forefront. Like subtextually, hopefully you're saying these interesting things, but you're couching it in like hopefully an insanely fun bonkers road trip hillbilly horror movie. But that's the goal, is to like actually try and say stuff, but also have it be just like a movie that if you could watch it and just be like, oh, I was just entertained, I didn't get any of that. It's like, great. But then hopefully if you want to think about some of the stuff, that it's there too for you if you want it. But yeah, that's the hope.
For David specifically, I'm curious, because Matt, Jeff, they were familiar with that like touring scene was that something that you had been aware of, or was that like a new world for you to venture into?
No, that all of that was new. I mean, like I don't have a lot of grit. So like my musical taste is like very middle of the road. I've never been in a band. You know, I think all of us feel at times like a little bit of a misfit. And I feel like that is kind of part of the world that Matt created. And that I certainly, you know, identify with, you know, like feeling sometimes a little bit like you're on the outside versus like at the center of things. But yeah, like I am not remotely cool in terms of my tastes
I beg to
in
differ,
music,
sir.
or you know, I don't have a biker jacket or any of that shit. I have Vans. I wear Vans.
There you go.
That's about as cool as I get.
That's about as cool as I get, man.
Matt, I wanted to ask you too, because you were so embedded in that scene. Ray and I have very much been embedded in the emo punk scene since we were younger, teenage years. I was like 14 in 2004, so like that era of music really shaped me. I was just curious to hear some of your musical influences or current artists you've really been enjoying.
Oh man, current artists. Let me see. Man, this is it's one of those things that music is like omnipresent in my life. Like when I wake up in the morning, I put on a record. When I like do the dishes, like music is always going, right? And it's so weird because whenever I always do check-ins with friends where it's like, what have you been listening to? What have you been watching? You know that. And whenever somebody asks me, what have you been listening to? Like I just blank. And not because like, dude, if I'm listening, which I do, if I'm listening to the Spice Girls, I'm not embarrassed to say I'm listening to the Spice Girls, but it's just like my brain for some reason stops. So I'm just trying to think of like what I've put on my record player in the past 2 days. So what I put on my record player in the past 2 days, I put on because I just got that De La Soul record. That's on vinyl, so I've been listening to that. Shannon and the Clams I've been listening to. I'm not sure if you guys know The Explosion. What else have I been putting on? The Saturday Night Fever soundtrack I've been listening to. Oh yeah, Jeff's band, $500. They have a record out that's like fire.
Really good. It's really good.
It's so good.
I picked up a physical copy of it a couple months ago.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah.
I want to wait for Bandcamp Friday to pick up my copy, I think.
Oh yeah. But yeah, I mean, again, that's something where it's just like I would say like, if you look at my record collection, because I have it according to genre, probably punk and hardcore takes up the vast majority. I would say as far as there's a few new bands that I really like I just ordered Gel's first LP that's coming out. That's I mean, I've heard a few songs. That sounds amazing. They're like one of my favorite live bands to see right now. Scowl is really great.
I'm seeing Scowl pretty soon. So
oh dude, they're a total blast. Just like unending energy. I'm trying to think what I'm going to see in the next couple months. Like I'm seeing Restorations, which is
Restorations is amazing.
Yeah, Philly band. Yeah. So I'm going to see them. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah. I mean that's a pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Restoration. I've seen Restoration twice, and they're amazing both times.
They're like just the wall of sound. All you got to do is just pop a couple of edibles and just
exactly.
And Restoration is a live band because I have the records, and the records are great.
Yeah,
but live.
Totally different. No, I mean. Different. Yeah, my brother got me into them because he worked he was like the booker at House of Independence, which is that Asbury Park venue.
Yeah.
And he's been working in the music world. Like he used to work at the old Asbury Lanes and booked there. And I remember like years ago he was like, because I love that, just like, I mean, just wall of sound, just like I love going to shows. I try to go to like, if not a local show, just like seeing something music related at least every week or every couple of weeks. And he was just like, dude, you're just going to be taken away. And what's crazy is that band, like, I would say the vast majority of the times I've seen them, because I lived in New York and then Jersey and then now Philadelphia, I've seen them like probably like 14 or 15 times. And like, I would say like always probably, or like most of the time under like 50 people. And they're just like, I like still play as if they're playing for like, a few hundred or thousand people. So like those bands I love that just like, it doesn't matter if it's for 3 or like 3,000. They're just like absolutely booming. Great energy. Yeah. Love it.
Yeah, but both times I saw them, they were the openers, so I kind of wish I could see them as headliners,
Yeah.
because I saw them open for the early November, and
Oh, yeah.
then I saw them open for Me Without You.
Hell yeah. Cool.
That would be awesome. Yeah, I like Ray and I are so embedded in that show culture. So we just wanted to ask you because we're both like we go to so many shows a year. But I want to ask you guys because we ask everyone that comes on the show because we just think it's fun. So Matt as a director and David as an actor, are there for David, is there a director or directors you'd love to work with? And Matt, are there any actors that you'd really like to work with in your career?
Besides Jared Leto. Besides Jared Leto.
I know it's rough because there's probably a lot, but like top.
Yeah, I was just gonna say all of them. I mean, I would love to work with Astor. I would love to work with. I'm also a big Linklater fan, so I'd love to work with Matt again. I mean, I have a lot of like I love David Lynch. There's a lot of directors that I love, but for me, it's so much more about the particular project. Like Martin Scorsese is a genius, but like I don't want to work on Gangs of New York. I don't want to work on, like there are films that all these people make that just like for whatever reason don't hit me. So I think it is more project based than necessarily. I mean, I'm not going to turn Martin Scorsese down.
Yeah, it's really tough. I'm racking my brain. There's like, I mean, clearly, I really love to work with David again. And there's like so many actors. Like I started Tar right before we did this interview. And like Kate Blanchett's like somebody that is like like I don't, my brain can't compute like working with somebody like that. But there's like, I think it is project because like there's so many actors that I'm so taken by, but I think some are like, it depends like what I've written for them and what they're, because I feel like what's really interesting, what would be really interesting is working with certain actors. Like, I mean, Sandler's kind of gotten to this point now where he's no longer there, but like an actor that you really pigeonhole into just being one thing. And I'd love to like, be able to work with actors and try and envision them in like a different way or a different world. So there's nobody in particular. I mean, I think this is a good answer for me because it's not realistic, so I can't be disappointed. But I would have loved to have worked with like Nicholson in the 70s and early 80s.
Yeah,
I think like, I mean, he, as far as like a male actor, I mean, it's just he has an energy and charisma that nobody else is even in his lane during that time. So like, especially like just having watched 5 Easy Pieces recently again, is like he's such a despicable character in moments of that movie, or like in a lot of it, he's a bastard. But his charm and the way he looks, he just has this like this likability that, I mean, I've never seen a character be so awful and still like he's so charming and likable, and you're willing to follow him through. Because I usually hate movies where you have a despicable or a really shitty character and you have to follow them for like even 90 minutes seems like a task. But that movie, it's just, he's so mesmerizing to watch, yet he's so awful to Karen Black, who's like the most sympathetic, beautiful, kind of like, innocent character in this. And he's just so, I mean, but still he's so mesmerizing to, I mean, it's so weird. So it's like, I would have loved to have worked with him during that time. Cause I feel like his energy, like there's just something about his energy that's so like out of this world. But really, yeah, I mean, I just think like finding interesting people that aren't going to do the typical, like, that's what I think was so great about David with Peckerhead, is seeing how many people ingested that character in those words and just mangled it and made it so hack and so like brutal to like sit through 2 minutes of that, and to take a character that, that's such a fine line where, I mean, David's really nice in terms of describing my writing, but that character could really go south fast in terms of like being really hack, kind of, like I said, like Joe Dirt, impersonation. And he brought such, like, I mean, for a character that could be argued to be pretty one-dimensional, he brought such depth to it, which is really like what it doesn't matter if you're working with, you know, Kate Blanchett or, you know, some kid who just is getting their first acting gig. I'm not calling David a kid that's getting his first acting gig. But I'm saying, like, working with somebody that, you know, you might discount because, you know, their resume isn't as extensive and they haven't worked with Scorsese or whatever. I think it's just about like finding people that are going to take, you know, something that you've written and will kind of bring it bring it to life, which is like, that's the most exciting and the scariest thing about casting is just like, you don't, at least for me, I hear it in my head, I see it, but it doesn't really like kind of click in until you see somebody read it right, or play it right. And that's why, like, I mean, you know, with Peckerhead, just kind of full circle, we won the fucking lottery with that. Because I feel like, you know, with all those characters, I mean, it was just like, you didn't have to drag them there. They just kind of understood it.
The other part of that, who you want to work with, also, like I've done a lot of plays, and I've had plays where the part is great and the script is great, and then the director is a complete monster.
Yeah.
And so the other part of that is to work with good people who are like decent and kind and aren't there to just either cash a check or to be on some weird head trip. You know, you want to work with menches.
So that's a known Roman Polanski.
I've actually heard recently, like through some interviews with Willem Dafoe, about like working with Robert Eggers and like how many people love working with him because they just say he's so like into it with all the actors and like the set design and just things that he shouldn't necessarily have to focus on as a director, but
yeah,
pay so much attention to. And I feel like that's got to be what you would want to gravitate towards, is that type of an environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I feel like we got one of the best lines that I'm never going to forget, and I'm going to quote it for the rest of my life. And we got it thanks to David. Every time I look at a handsome man, I'm going to be like, did you see blowjob eyes?
That was such a good line.
Well, that's all Matt. We were shooting that, and it was easy because Greg is, you know, a handsome dude. For some reason, I thought Mr. Blowjob Eyes was so much funnier and better. And so we shot it like maybe 4 times. And then Matt says, can you just say it the way it's written? And of course, that's the one that's in the film. That's the one that was the best, you know?
Yeah. That's all from in college. One of my roommates junior year had like beautiful blue, like you could get lost in them eyes. So I used to call them blowjob eyes.
Jeff's reaction in that scene too is priceless.
Yeah,
that's what
Jeff's so great.
No, that was a good answer. And I did want to bring up though, because what you were talking about, Matt, in our last interview that we did, you were talking about bringing in actors that have like that dichotomy, putting them in a different space. We talked about have you seen the Bobcat Goldthwait movie, World's Greatest Dad?
With Robin Williams.
Yeah, we were talking about that movie in the last episode, because you talk about taking a character that's known for something so specifically and making him this horrible person. So I always find those roles really fascinating too, when you could take someone so lovable and still love them while they're doing something so despicable.
Yeah, and that also makes me like those actors that are willing to do that. Like especially like Robin Williams doing that is, you know, he has this kind of persona of the types of characters he played and the types of roles he would kind of jump into, and to do kind of like a low budget kind of ugly, you know, film. Those are the type of people that are interesting, because they're not just sleepwalking through roles. You know, like I'm sure it's easier for him to play Patch Adams, you know, like 17 different fucking times. But I think it's more interesting to take on roles that are like, you know, might challenge or change the way in which people may look at him. The
Nick Cage Renaissance. I feel like right now he's just picking so many incredible roles and really showing his versatility. And you brought up Adam Sandler, which is another perfect example. I'm excited he's working with the Safdies again. That'll be really interesting.
Yeah. No, I mean, Sandler's like one of those people that he's just such. I just watched Hustle.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like, I mean, when I say disposable, I don't mean it in a mean way. I mean, it's one of those movies that I'll never watch again, but I mean, it's just like, it's like a really lovely, like, I think the older I'm getting, the more I'm searching for films that aren't cynical.
Mhm.
And that movie is like such a genuinely like life affirming kind of like really beautiful story. And I mean, as a basketball fan, I hadn't seen a basketball movie probably do it that well in like at least a couple decades. So I thought it was really, really well done. I mean, there's some things I wasn't totally sold on, but I mean, that's a movie that like I feel I mean, I wish streaming makes things so weird that I feel like that movie's gonna like that's a movie my dad would love, and my dad hadn't even heard of it.
Yeah.
It's just like those movies just become so kind of like now they're just a wash in a sea of other content.
Right. It's just content rather than movies. Yeah.
It's a shame because that, and especially like the director of that, the reason why I watched it is I listened to him in like a long form interview on YouTube, and he's like a documentarian, like he's like a real deal, like, and like anytime I hear a smart person talk about movies, I have to watch their movie if I've never seen it. And that was Teddy agrees. No, like she also liked Hustle. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how we got on that. I'm sorry, I took us off course. But yeah, Sandler's like such an interesting dude that does such like some movies that you're like, what were you thinking? But then
no, that's the best. That is honestly the best type of actor. I always get excited for those type of movies when I'm like, oh, here's a person that's always typecast that's going to get put in something different.
Yeah.
Jim Carrey became 1,000 times more interesting to me when I saw him do The Majestic and The Number 23 and all of those movies.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we don't really have any more questions for you guys, but we really appreciate you being on today. It was great to hear like the behind the scenes stuff. So we always want to ask, do you want to tell people where they can find you, where they can find the movie, how they can watch it, all that good stuff?
Sure. Uncle Peckerhead, if you, I mean, it's available on Blu-ray if you want to buy it, but you can stream it for free on Amazon Prime, Vudu, Tubi, probably a few other places now that we don't know about. You can also just steal it from BitTorrents. We're not making any money. Just grab it where you can get it. Take it, ask a friend to download it for you if your computer's slow, whatever. Yeah, I mean, and you can also, like, if you want to buy it digitally, everywhere you can, but I mean, you can probably get it for free. What else? Yeah, Subtlety Rex is our like production company. It's basically like just kind of like a collective of people. My wife Wiki's involved. She did production design and wardrobe and co-produced Uncle Peckerhead. Jeff is involved. Jeff co-produced Uncle Peckerhead, wrote all the music, stuff like that. And we kind of have a traveling band of people we love working with. David, of course, being one of our proudest and best group.
And Ryan,
who played Shiloh in the movie. But if you just go to subtletyrex.com, unclepeckerhead.com will also take you there. As far as me, you can find me on, I don't really go on Twitter anymore, but if you go on Twitter, it's Young Bull, or you can just follow Uncle Peckerhead, and same thing with Instagram, Uncle Peckerhead, or I'm Kid Dynamat.
Nice. Awesome. Well, we really appreciate you guys being on. David, did you want to say anything? You got anything coming up? Anything you want to talk about?
No, I just auditioning. We'll see what's next. I'm not a big social media guy. I deleted Facebook, and then I deleted Twitter. I'm still hanging on to Instagram by a thread. But if you want to find me, I'll just be wandering aimlessly around Brooklyn. So, just wave. And I'll buy you a cup of coffee.
And I have it pulled up that your Blu-ray is available on Epic Pictures. So
yeah, yep, it is available via our distributor. And I mean, I just want to say thank you to you guys for having us on.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
absolutely awesome.
Yeah, it sounds like a line, but making a micro budget film is so incredibly difficult. So it's so nice when people find it and like it enough to watch it, one, but two, want to talk about it. So
Yeah.
it's really awesome that you guys came with such, thoughtful, great questions. And we really appreciate that you
Yeah,
watched
absolutely.
it.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
And if you ever have more of those duh t-shirts, we would love to get our hands on some.
For
No
sure.
doubt. No doubt.
Well, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was our conversation with Matt and David. I hope that you guys enjoyed it as much as Ray and I did.
I mean, I certainly enjoyed it.
I did. I thought that they just provided a lot of insight. And it's also cool. Now we've had two guests back to back that have been embedded in that sort of music scene that we know and love.
I know, that was really cool that we had with the Adams, we talked about the 80s hardcore scene, and now in this one we kind of touched base a little bit on the emo, post hardcore revival that we've had recently. So
Exactly. And as Ray and I always say in these interviews, go watch the movie. Like Uncle Peckerhead right now, you can pick up the Blu-ray. It's on Tubi, Amazon. It's like everywhere right now. So just go watch the movie. That's the reason why Ray and I use this platform, is to promote these directors and actors' wonderful work. And this movie is amazing. It's such a heartfelt movie that's also incredibly violent.
yeah, there's something about this movie that like hits on. It just checks off all the boxes of everything you love about a movie.
Absolutely. It was so much fun to get to talk to them, and hopefully we can bring Matt back on for whatever his next project is, because knowing he wants to do a slasher movie, that's very exciting to me.
Yeah, that's going to be super fun.
Yeah. So that was that conversation. So now we're going to get into Ray's new favorite segment, which is Soundtrack of the Week. Soundtrack of the Week.
There it is.
So what do you got cooked up for me this week, Ray?
Well, in the topic of music and bands that are having a hard time touring, and dysfunctional people and crazy people, I figure we can bring up Frank.
Yay, Frank. A movie I still haven't seen, but I bought the Blu-ray at Dollar Tree.
Movie's amazing, okay?
Yeah.
And the songs, like, the thing about the soundtrack that's really funny is that, like, it's a very weird abstract soundtrack for the score, and then the songs written by, like, the few songs that make the cut that were written by for the band, they're the weirdest songs. Like,
Yeah.
they're not meant to be like heart pounding, like life changing songs. They're ridiculous, and you hear some of them in the movie. And I honestly, Nate, cannot recommend this movie enough.
I know you've told me a million times to watch it, and I love Michael Fassbender. I have no excuse.
So Frank, it's just a black vinyl, so I didn't want to pull it out. But yeah, Frank, go watch it. Go check it out. Watch and for those in the know, it features her name is she plays drums for the band Autolux. If you're familiar with them, they're like a indie kind of electronic band that features members of the band Failure. So she's featured. She's actually the drummer in the band, and Autolux is fantastic. So I highly recommend the band Autolux as well. But we're talking about Frank. So go watch Frank.
I'm going to watch Frank soon. Well, I'm going to cheat this week and not do a soundtrack, but I'm going to do the record from Jeff's band, $500.
Oh, that record looks like a Chris $500 bill.
Exactly. And I'm going to go ahead and pull this out so you guys who are watching visually can see the variant, but what a cool variant for this record. And yeah, as soon as I watched Uncle Peckerhead, I actually messaged with Jeff for a little bit, and I was like, I want to pick this record up because the music is really great, and the music is really great, and it carries over onto this record. They are a great band. They're really great people, so go support their music too. Like, the movie's great, but their music is great as well. So yeah, $500. Check out their music.
Yeah, it's very, very like a la prime time Green Day, like when they were under primes.
It's really great. A little heavier, but still vocally wise. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's great. I love it a lot. And I've been playing this record quite a bit, so I would recommend picking it up. It's on Bandcamp.
And I would argue that that kind of is the soundtrack to the movie
Yes, 100%.
because those songs really are used in the movie.
Yes, and Jeff worked on all the music for the movie, and that was cool to listen to. That's two movies back to back that had music play such a heavy influence in the movie, which is cool that we've got to have two of those conversations. And Ray and I are hopefully going to have a lot more conversations to come with other filmmakers throughout the rest of the year.
That's going to be fun. But next week we are sticking to what we had originally planned this week
Before everything got flip-flopped and changed around.
before the multiverses collided.
Yeah, so next week we're going to be talking about women in film specifically.
Yeah.
Because it is Women's History Month. And so we're going to talk about some of our favorite directors, actresses, composers, any and all people involved in film that are women. And I'm really excited about that. I've been putting together my list, and I'm looking forward to sharing those with you. I love doing these episodes because we always have vastly different lists with a little bit of crossover.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see. And I'm also like, much like what happened on the Black History Month episode, like educating myself and realizing how much, not so much how much I've sucked at this, but more so like how many more voices are out there that I need to be paying attention to.
100%. And so we're really looking forward to doing that episode. As always, you can follow us over at the Film Monsters Podcast on Instagram, or My Exit Unfair and Analog C as our personal accounts. We're posting a lot of soundtracks. You can see Ray's backdrop. You're going to see a lot of those things posted, especially that Smile vinyl right there in the middle.
Right there.
Right there. And then I'll, just like I have for the past two interview episodes, all the information will be linked in. I post where you can watch the movie, where you can follow everybody online, and just go support these guys' work. It was great that they took some time out of their day to have a conversation with us. And this is always like a cool thing for Ray and I, because you grow an even fonder appreciation than you already have for the film after talking to the people who made it.
And also, like, go support, independent art in general. I mean, whether it is movies, music, I mean, buying a record, buying a movie goes a long way, more than just streaming a song, or more than paying $2 on, even for this movie, like Uncle Peckerhead. Like, yeah, you can watch it for free, and that's great that it's available for free, but we want people like Jeff, like Adam, like David, to like Matt, like everyone involved in this movie, and everybody involved in like other projects. You can stream something for $1, but it goes a longer way when you actually like support the work. So in this case, pick up a Blu-ray or pick up a record from those small artists that you love, because that helps a lot more than just streaming something on Spotify.
And you get more work from them, because the more people watch it, the more art that they're able to make, which is what's exciting. So yeah, so go check out Uncle Peckerhead and support $500. I'm sure they would appreciate it, and hopefully we can get some more material from them soon. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Cheers.
Goodbye, everyone.